Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, and those following by various forms of media. Welcome to this urgent public meeting number 13 of today, Friday, January 27, 2023. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Dr. Anders Samuel, the Honorable Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, Mr. Ekbor Duran, and their respective support staff. We established a quorum of 9 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I've not received any notifications other than MP Bijlani, who will be late to this meeting. Are there any other notifications from members of Parliament? Emmanuel. MP Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Good morning to you. Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. Good morning to you, Mr. Chairman, our Khafid. Good morning to the Honorable Minister Duran and Minister Samuel and their respective guests and staff members. Good morning to my honorable colleagues and everyone who's watching and viewing by whichever means. Mr. Chairman, in dialogue with the SG in terms of a request that I sent in came in late. I'm just doing for clarity's sake, wanting to know if the SG received the documents on time, if they was forwarded to the respective ministers in a request concerning the monument. There's a feedback on this mic. Concerning the monument permit of the courthouse. The reason why I'm making it here in notifications, because I don't want it to be that the minister may have documents, not have documents, and say he didn't receive the notification, he didn't get anything, so nothing could be passed on, and I don't have the requisite documents for this meeting. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. In consultation with the Secretary General, your document was indeed received and is still being processed to be sent on to the relevant party. They're working diligently. The minister would not have received it as yet. However, being that the minister is here and you do have an opportunity, if it would assist in being able to have the document as soon as possible in preparation for this meeting, we will have the Secretary General work on that in the meantime. Okay? Thank you, members of Parliament. We have as agenda points for this meeting, agenda point 1, we have, I apologize, I did not look at the screen, and we do have another notification. MP Sarah Westcott-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good morning and a happy birthday to you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to our support staff, my colleagues, of course. Good morning to both ministers here and their entourage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to briefly use notifications to notify the general public of my most recent letters to government. These regard 1, a letter to the Prime Minister asking for details with respect to the issue of, let me, for the sake of the public, call it snap election in 2023, yes or no? What is the government's position on it? Has such a position been taken? I will publish the respective questions, but that topic has been put in writing to the Prime Minister. I also ask of the Minister of Finance that the situation regarding our budgets and financial management, that this be explained. I have stated in a previous meeting of Parliament that I believe that we are in a very unique situation where our budgets are concerned, with the 2022 budget having been rejected after passing the legislative process, in other words, after being approved by Parliament, and the 2023 budget, as far as I know, is nowhere in sight, giving CFT's comments on the draft 2023 budget. In addition to that, I directed a letter to the Prime Minister regarding the mutual agreement that is supposed to replace the so-called Coho law. And when I directed this letter, I indicated to the Prime Minister that it is my belief that we are further from home as Parliament, where oversight is concerned with the mutual agreement than we were with the Coho draft law. And so I proposed to the Prime Minister that this mutual agreement that would ratify the execution of the country package for St. Martin, that some guarantees be included in the mutual agreement, and that the Parliament of St. Martin be given insight into the draft mutual agreement before it is agreed to by the governments. Let me briefly explain, Mr. Chairman. A mutual agreement that regulates such an important issue like the country package and its implementation is actually between the governments. And Parliament has no overview and no oversight where that is concerned. So, Mr. Chairman, these letters are with the government. I hope to receive an explanation where that is concerned as soon as possible. I have some other items that I believe need to be addressed, but I'll find some way to tie them into the agenda points of today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. And in consultation with the Griffie, we can confirm the first two letters you mentioned have already gone out to the government. You mentioned a third letter. We can't confirm at this point if that's been received, but maybe through the course of this meeting, I can update you. No other notifications. Thank you, members of Parliament. We have as agenda points for this public meeting the update on the current legislation and policies regarding the preservation and management of heritage, and an update on the current status of the Monument Council and the Monument Fund. This meeting was requested by the MPs Duncan, Gumbs, and Heyliger-Marten. We go over to agenda point 1. On January 25th, 2023, Parliament received a letter, this is IS 381 of the 2022-2023 parliamentary year, dated January 25th, 2023, from the MPs Duncan, Gumbs, and Heyliger-Marten with a request that an urgent meeting of Parliament be convened with the above-mentioned agenda point on the subject of heritage protection. The presence of the ministers of ECYS and VROMI were also requested, and the ministers are here with us today. Hence, this urgent public meeting. At this time, I would like to give an opportunity to the requesters of the meeting if they would like to elucidate their request. MP Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A good morning to you. Good morning to the SG. Good morning to my colleagues. A good morning to the ministers of ECYS and VROMI and their support staff. A good morning to those in the Tribune, and of course to all of St. Martin and our people tuned in. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'm so happy that this meeting has been called. I think this might have been the fastest public meeting that we have ever seen. It was triggered by the destruction of the ruins at Diamond Estate. But besides that, Mr. Chairman, as a parliament, it is our duty to put the interests of St. Martin people at the front and to the top of our tasks. It is also the duty of government to protect and preserve this country's cultural, tangible, and intangible heritage. And so that is why we are here. My hope today, Mr. Chairman, is that we have a debate and we have discussions on solutions. I personally am not here to point fingers and to blame. That is not my role today. I believe that we do that in this country every day. In fact, we're quite professional at it. I would love us today to talk solutions, to talk about the gaps, the holes, the bottlenecks that exist, policy and legislative-wise, and how all of us in here can tackle the problems and move forward. That is my hope for this meeting, and I look forward to the discussions further with the ministers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Duncan, for that elucidation on your request. Members of Parliament, I would like to give the opportunity, or other requesters? No? Okay. Members of Parliament would like to give the opportunity for some introductory remarks from each of the ministers before opening the first round of the debate. I will first give the floor to the Minister of VROMI, Egbert Duran.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to my colleague. Good morning to the honorable members of parliament, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin, also our support staff. I will start by saying happy birthday to you, Mr. Chairman. Wish you many more healthy years and much guidance and wisdom as you continue with your task in serving the people. Mr. Chairman, I would first of all also like to thank the members of parliament that requested this meeting, in particular, this urgent meeting. I say thank you because this tells us and shows us, in particular, the situation has the interest of the highest legislative body on our island. I am happy, I'm happy to be here also to provide any answers to whatever questions you may have that relates to the ministry that I oversee. I would also like to start this morning by stating a few facts. The fact is, a historical landmark located in a Diamond and State property was demolished. It was revealed that persons yet to be identified demolished the structure. Mr. Chairman, the fact is, this is why we are here this morning. I would also like to state that as Minister of Vromi, I strongly condemn these actions of those who destroy the structure that has such historical value to our nation. Although to my understanding, the structure was not registered on the protected monument list, it is no secret to the landowners that this structure holds an immense value. Mr. Chairman, before it is asked, let me state that the Ministry of Vromi has not given any kind of permission when it pertains to this property. No permits were issued for this property, nor are there any permits being currently processed at the ministry. As minister, I will ensure that while my colleague Minister Samuel is busy with his process, I will not entertain any requests for such a permit either. I just wanted to make that clear, and I thank you for this opportunity and look forward to a healthy debate.
Thank you, Minister Duran. Next, Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Rodolphe Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and to the members of Parliament. Good morning to my colleague, Minister Vromi, and his support staff. Good morning to my support staff. To those who are listening to us by whichever way, and good morning to the people of St. Martin. Mr. Chairman, this meeting is indeed a very important meeting because this meeting deals with who we are, our culture, our history, what we inherit, our heritage, and I am pleased to realize and see that finally, when I say the word finally, that we are at a stage where we realize that there are aspects in our life, in our community, that belongs to our history, that indicate where we come from, that indicate why we are here where we are. There has been a time in our history where we probably did not pay sufficient attention to the buildings that speaks about St. Martin's history, about street names or streets or whatever we have to protect that represents the culture, the people of St. Martin. When the message came in about the destruction of Diamond 26, it was indeed shocking because I too could not believe that in 2023, when there is so much attention for curriculums on history, for culture preservation, and talks in the kingdom about culture and culture museums and whether or not apologies should be done, that yet you will get persons having the bravery to, but yet in the middle of the night, to go and destroy Diamond 26. And why? Because we know the manifestations that took place on that location. I understand that a monument can be on the property of a private citizen, and also the way how we decide what is a monument, it can be that it is the private the private, let's say, property of a person. But when we look at it in terms of our culture and the value that it has, then I believe the respect must also be given to that. And that is why this morning, and also in the days leading up, the community have rightfully give their opinion and their outrage against the destruction of these monuments. I can remember there were 2 houses on the other side of Orania School, and for economic development, those 2 houses was taken up, put on the back of a flatbed, and they were taken down at the area of Foga, and they were blown away. There were also nice houses at the Passing Grand Hotel on the other side where the nuns were living, and I always talk about those. They were also moved for economic development. And today, we know that our history also have value. So destroying our own value that we cannot give over to the future generations is definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. And today, I am here in Parliament to answer questions regarding the monuments, the monument funds, whatever questions that the members of Parliament have, I will do my best to make the answers available. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel. Members of Parliament, we would go over to the agenda point. I also want to state here, as per the request, there were actually 2 agenda points, one being the update on current legislations and policies regarding the preservation and management of heritage, and a second agenda point more centered around the Monument Council, which states update on the current status of the Monument Council and the Monument Fund. I do understand that these are some quite interchangeable topics, so there may be situations where there may be references, for example, to the Monument Council in the first agenda point and vice versa. So just to note that that will, of course, be understandable where there's certain crossover, or if there is a proposal otherwise to merge the agenda point. If someone can propose, make such a proposal, and if there's no objection, then we can do so. MP Rumo.
Colleagues and ministers, yes, I would like to propose that we merge the 2 agenda points in one.
I see it is seconded and third. Is there any objection to that proposal? And I hear no objection. Therefore, members of Parliament, we will now have 1 agenda point, and I will merge it as follows. Update on the current legislation and policies regarding the preservation and management of heritage, as well as the current status of the Monument Council and Monument Fund. So we'll remove update on, as well as, just for the record, I'll read it one more time. Update on the current legislation and policies regarding the preservation and management of heritage, as well as the current status of the Monument Council and Monument Fund. Thank you for that proposal, MP, and we will now continue with that agenda point, where we now will have the first round of speakers. I look to the speakers list. Members of Parliament, just for clarity as well, you know, we have our new system where you will use this, and it does kind of make a speakers list, but for public meetings of Parliament, you're still asked to sign the signing sheet at the desk, and we do have 3 members already signed in. First, MP Solange Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and the Minister of Education mentioned it. For those of us that have experienced the manifestations over the past few years, in particular, the reenactment of the Diamond 26 Run for Freedom at Diamond Estate, you could imagine seeing that video with the bulldozer under the cover of night taking down that structure. You could imagine how angry, hurt, sad, disappointed, outraged it made us, especially us who have been going to the Diamond 26 Run over the last few years. We seem to, in this country, especially now, when I feel it maybe now more as an adult, We seem to have feelings of disappointment, anger, frustration more than ever now. And to me, it's increasing, and this is an extremely dangerous pattern. And it's all of us that are in it to change it, and that is something that I want to continue to repeat. Again, not pointing fingers, but saying we are now all responsible. A few years ago, it may have been our parents, but now we are responsible and we have to act and be proactive. Mr. Chairman, yesterday evening, I just want to share a small story. My niece was in the kitchen making a sandwich, and she wasn't aware of the destruction of the ruins. But she told me, you know, Auntie Mila, now I understand why you're always talking about history and heritage, because we recently took a field trip to Emilia Wilson, and Dr. J. Havis gave them a presentation and was walking them through the plantation. And she learned for the first time about at least stories of enslaved people on St. Martin. She saw the ruins, the boiler room, I think, and she was really excited about learning. She said, and she's in third form, she said, you know, I'm going to pick history now because of that field trip instead of geography. I don't know what you chose in third form, Mr. Chairman, but I chose geography because there was no St. Martin history. That's the difference. But it was interesting to have a discussion with her because of the discussions that are going on, not only on St. Martin, but on Statia, on Saba, in the Netherlands, about us now being confronted not only with our past, but being asked to do something about it, really do something. I think, Mr. Chairman, Emilia Wilson Estate and those ruins, they would not be here now if it was government land. Because we have been selling out this country forever. We continue to do so. But here we are, and we are the ones that are in the driver's seat right now. So I really hope, Mr. Chairman, with this government and this parliament, we really, truly make history and heritage a priority, and that we do the legislative and policy changes needed to move forward. I have some questions for the minister, for both ministers. I will start with the Minister of Romi, through you, Mr. Chairman. Can Parliament receive all of the policies and procedures related to monuments and cultural heritage? There's a number of different pieces of legislation, but what we will not find online is the actual policies and procedures. What is the internal procedure for the request of renovation to a monument? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also know what is the policy and procedure for building permits for properties that include monuments? So that would be included in what I just asked. Would it be possible for Parliament to receive those policies? But also an elucidation of them would be appreciated as well. Is there a technical expert in Vromi that deals with monuments and permits right now? If not, is the FTE still there? And because what I understood is that there was someone who used to handle permits at Vromi, but that don't anymore, and we're talking monuments. I'm not 100% sure, so I would like the minister to please clarify. I would like to ask the Minister of Romi, Mr. Chairman, through you, if land can be issued to the museum. When are we going to get a national museum in this country? I have faith in the people that have kept the museum alive, that currently run the museum, that all they need is a piece of land, all they need is a building. We have the most neglected museum in the Dutch Caribbean. And if this isn't the time now that we really say that heritage and preservation is a priority and we do something about it, then that time ain't coming again. And that's my personal opinion. Is there a procedure for citizens to report ruins that they find, that they may come across? And this is a government-wide question. Is there a plan for landmarks like Fort Amsterdam? We have a cleanup happening at Foga tomorrow. What is the plan, and if that plan can be shared with Parliament? What is government's plan to establish a national archive? Now, I've moved from Vromi, this is general affairs, but I'm going to ask the government for those plans. What are the ideas? Mr. Chairman, I believe, and this is also based on our issues here at Parliament, that there is so much restructuring that needs to happen. We have taken over organizational structures that no longer work for this country. So for me, I am looking at what needs to change at the structural level, and that is legislation. So when I ask what are the bottlenecks that the Monument Council may be experiencing from operating optimally, I hope that I can get a clear answer on whether that is the structure, whether that is funding, whether that is their advices are not taken. I'd like to understand exactly why our councils may not be able to do what they want to do. Mr. Chairman, I would like to know where the Monument Fund is. It has been a couple of years since the Minister of Education mentioned that the fund is coming. And so, and you mentioned it the other day, Mr. Chairman, that you just would want some honesty. So I hope that we can just get a clear response, a very direct response on where the fund is, if the advice was signed. I guess the advice was signed off on. So what the bottleneck there is. We often have a number of shared processes in government, but yet we lack interministerial working groups or policies. So when it comes to monuments and built heritage, the Minister of Education and the Minister of Vromi actually are connected. One is supposed to look at monuments and built heritage, the other may be more intangible, but there is a connection there that I want to understand. Not only what the connection is or how should it be functioning optimally, and what processes should be in place or what processes are not in place. Because that happens many, many times. And what you hear and what I've heard is that somebody say, yeah, but that was Vromi. The Vromi had to do that. You hear, no, well, it's culture who have the mandate or it's culture who's supposed to do it. So I really would like to understand the processes and how the ministries can work together more effectively moving forward. Mr. Chairman, this year we will commemorate the 160th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, 150, 160. I would like to know what the government's plans are. I know, and I am very happy and I am comforted to know that Ms. Clara Reyes is at the helm. The plan is already, the plan is probably already worked out, and so I look forward to hearing what the plans are. I can tell you that the Netherlands is planning. They have a whole bunch of things going on, and they will want to see what St. Martin is doing. That aside, there are funds available, and I am not sure if we are taking advantage of those funds. Whatever they do in the Netherlands is for their people, but we need to ensure that we are doing what we can here, and I'm looking forward to those plans and commemorating this very, very important anniversary in a few months. Mr. Chairman, I mentioned the museum earlier, and I asked specifically about land. I would now like to ask about how the Minister of Education sees the museum. I'd like to ask how much subsidy the museum receives, if the minister believes that this is enough, and how, or at least what is government's plan, in particularly as it relates to the museum moving forward. Again, the museum is only around because the people who work there, the people who believe in it, saved it from Irma, saved it from a number of different disasters. And if the museum is a priority for government, then we need to see it in action and in how we treat the museum. Mr. Chairman, we have a National Commission for UNESCO. It is a part of the Ministry of Education. There is a secretariat within the support bureau of the ministry. I would like to know if UNESCO, if the commission is operating optimally, and if not, again, what are the bottlenecks? I have heard that there is a need for a change to the structure, a need for maybe additional legislation and policy. And so again, if we can get a direct answer, because this is not something that we should take lightly, because they play a role in cultural heritage and preservation, especially being connected to the United Nations, where funds are always available, but we are never able to receive them because we don't have what we need to have in place. So again, from a structural perspective, what needs to be done so that the commission can operate more optimally? The Minister of Romy mentioned consequences for the person who destroyed the landmark, Mr. Chairman, in a press release, and I would just like to know exactly what those consequences will be. Again, I think the minister mentioned a fine as per the law, so I just wanted a reiteration of the actions or the consequences. When we talk about preservation, we have to look at beyond the monument list, private property, just like Diamond Estate, that may be in danger of the same thing happening. And so according to my understanding, there is the old Spanish fort in Point Blanche, there is a ruin in K Bay, there is a house at Windsor Estate, there is a boiling house in Betty's Estate. There are a number of different historical ruins that are also in danger of being torn down. And so I would like to know, so that we do not, as a people, experience what we have experienced lately. I would like to know if there is a plan, if hopefully there is a work group that can be installed that could look at these properties that are not on the monument list and perhaps see if the owners can be negotiated with and so forth, and how that process can be laid out. And for now, Mr. Chairman, that were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Duncan. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. You have the floor.
Pleasant good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our Secretary General. Good morning to our two ministers here and their support staff, my fellow MPs, and good morning to those listening and hearing on the social media or any platform there is radio station. Mr. Chairman, my questions will mostly focus on the Monument Council, and I will get right into it, just for us to get a clear understanding on how it operates. My first question, Mr. Chairman, through you, is when and why was the Monument Council created? In other words, what led to the decision to establish the Monument Council? What criteria are they using to enlist monuments? And is there a procedure in place to follow when ruins are found? What are the tasks and responsibilities of the Monument Council in general? I noticed in today's edition of the Daily Herald that the Monument Council consists of a few names. For the record, I would like to have that listed again and also have their educational background, expertise, and experience that's right now on the Monument Council. How many buildings and or ruins are listed on the Monument Council? And is every building and or ruin on the Dutch side listed completely? Is everything there? If not, why not? Is the Monument Council legislated by law or by an ordinance? In conjunction with the Monument Council, there's supposed to be a monument fund. I read it earlier today, but just for clarity, maybe for Parliament. And also a monument restoration committee in place. They're supposed to have those two in place. If it's not in place, what is the ministry, what is the current status of that right now? Where is the Ministry of ECYS on that, on establishing those two committees? Is the Monument Council part of the UNESCO World Heritage Fund? If not, why not? And are you considering to be part of that if that's not the case? Can the Monument Fund issue fines? And are these fines legislated by law? If yes, I assume provided they're listed, what type of fines can be issued? When a private owner, for instance, of a monument accidentally or deliberately demolish or damage a monument, what type of fines is issued when that occurs? If a private owner deliberately ignores the recommendation of the Monument Council as it pertains to restoration, what legal recourses are there to address this? Is the Monument Council funded by any fixed budget? If so, what's the amount and what is it used for? If a building is deemed derelict by an independent profession, like for instance, a ICE, and a private owner is unable to afford a restoration, can the Monument Council financially support the private owner with the restoration? Is that possible? Through you, Mr. Chairman, my final questions are related to the Diamond Estate property. I've noticed last year that on 2 occasions, the Diamond Estate property was cleared and utilized for two occasions, 2 events. The Diamond 26 run, which I did for the first time, and with another event with the State Secretary. During that time, during that period, did the government or any representative of the Monument Council approach or meet a representative and or family member of the Diamond Estate property regarding enlisting of their ruins on the monument list? Because as the Minister of Rami earlier stated, it is not listed. So were there any offers on the table or any paper trail that can maybe prove that this sort of dialogue went on between the Monument Council, government, and the owners? If yes, can Parliament be provided with those documents? And lastly, and again expounding a little bit more on the Diamond Estate, lastly, when were these ruins discovered and how was it established that there is an historical importance to these ruins? Was an archaeological report commissioned back then? If so, amen, yes. If so, why is such being commissioned now? And if the report wasn't done, then why not? With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to leave it, and then we await the answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. Next on our speakers list, MP Angelique Rumeau.
Pleasant good morning to you once again, Mr. Chairman, to our honorable ministers and their support staff present, and of course to my colleague MPs, the viewing and listening public. Mr. Chairman, when moments like this happen, it serves as a true moment of reflection and introspection and forces us all to take a look at our system and identify what is not working in order to ensure that this is never done again. What happened at Diamond Estate must never, and I repeat, must never, ever happen again. Today, I do not want to point fingers or pass the buck. I want us to work together in the best interest of this country and our culture on how we can work to ensure that this never, ever happens again. Mr. Chairman, yesterday I actually went to take a look because, you know, this is something that interests me as well. And something that I noticed when at the site is that there was steel in the ruins that was the demolition part of it. So I wondered if anyone knows or through you, Mr. Chairman, if the ministers may know if there was any restoration works going on to this particular monument, and if so, by whom? That is a question that I would really like to have answered. My following questions are concerning the Monument Council. I would like to get an idea of the workings of the council since their inception and to gauge if there are changes that need to be made as it relates to their tasks, authority, and composition based on their experience thus far and taking into account what has happened. This year, the first full term of the Monument Council will be coming to an end. What are the plans moving forward in terms of extending or filling the council with new members? What are the profiles for members of the Monument Council? Based on the experience of the council thus far, have they done an assessment on the composition of the council? Meaning, do they think they require extra expertise in a particular sector, for example? Looking back at their first 4 years, what has been their experience thus far, based on what they have encountered? One of the core tasks of the council is to advise the minister. Based on what has taken place, can the minister share what advice he has received from the council thus far on the matter and the way that they have indicated the minister should move forward? And of course, I would hope that the minister has met, but the question is, has the minister met with the council since the incident? There is a national ordinance containing the new rules with regards to the basis for preservation of monuments, and the violation of Ordinance Article 12 states, anyone who violates a provision of this national ordinance or acts without or contrary to a permit, a regulation, or a condition as referred to in this national ordinance shall be punished with imprisonment not exceeding 1 year or a fine not exceeding 5,000 guilders. The offenses made punishable by this national ordinance are regarded as violations. Colleagues, I believe that this poses a huge, huge problem. We must ask ourselves in this room if one can commit such a heinous act of willfully destroying our monuments with no regard for our culture and what it means to our people, and if the punishment outlined above is sufficient. Is our culture worth no more than 5,000 guilders? And will such a punishment deter anyone in the future from doing the same? Our kingdom partner in the Netherlands has an amount of 4,100 euros for such a crime, which is just about double to ours. I hope we as Parliament here today can agree that changes need to be made to the ordinance, and we need to send a strong message to anyone thinking of committing such an act that it will not be dealt with lightly. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Angelique Rameau. Next, we have MP Christophe Emmanuel. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon to everyone.
Sorry to interrupt. MP Rameau, if you can turn off your mic to avoid feedback.
And good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Chairman, my questions are in and out in relations to the ministers and the Monument Council and everything on a whole. So I'm going to get right into my questions. Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to ask any one of the ministers in the Monument Council exactly what is considered a monument. What is considered a monument? How many registered monuments are there on the books at the Monument Council? How many registered monuments are there on the books at the Monument Council? Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Monument Council, is the courthouse a monument? And if yes, for how long has it been a monument? Mr. Chairman, I would like to know what type of work on a monument requires a permit? What type of work on a monument requires a permit? Now, Mr. Chairman, this question is two or three folds because it also goes into a building permit or a reconstruction permit or rebuilding permit or whatever works that needs to be done on a monument. I would like to know, Mr. Chairman, all of the requisite permits that is needed for whatever type of work need to be done on a monument. I'm going to elaborate a bit more on that question. How many permits are needed to repair, rebuild, refurbish, remodel, remove, everything? Mr. Chairman, restore, thank you very much, colleague, restore a monument permit. And it's a reason why I'm going that way, Mr. Chairman. You see, Diamond Estate, and this is what we do well, we react. Mr. Chairman, this meeting wouldn't have been called today if the Diamond Estate was still standing there. Not one of us would have been in here. This wouldn't have been an urgent meeting if the Diamond Estate was still standing there. Mr. Chairman, the salt pans and the old salt factory is still standing there. Mr. Chairman, it's the reason why I asked the question, because I want to believe that the courthouse is a monument. We pass it every day. We as the colleagues here, whenever we have meetings, we see it every day. Mr. Chairman, somebody toasting bread? Sorry. Mr. Chairman, there is serious construction work going on the courthouse right now. Now, as we speak. Serious work. The whole roof has been defaced or taken off for replacement and reattached or replaced or whatever it was done with it. There's scaffolding all over. There is serious work going on the courthouse right now. So I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of VROMI and the Honorable Minister of ECYS, do they have a monument permit for the works that is being carried out now? Do they have a building permit, a repair permit, whatever permit is needed for the works that are being carried out now? And Mr. Chairman, through you, please indicate to the ministers that the answers to that question don't need 2 weeks, because the ministers have to sign the permit and the decree for a monument permit to carry out works on a monument. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe one of my colleagues made mention to the amount. What are the penalties for not having a monument permit, yet works or working or construction we see are being done on a monument? Mr. Chairman, does the government of St. Martin have an estimated value of all our permits on the island? Do you have an estimated value of all the permits, of all the monuments on the island? Mr. Chairman, I would like to know, has an appraisal ever been done on the courthouse? And who owns the courthouse? Mr. Chairman, who owns the courthouse? Mr. Chairman, I would also like to know who built the courthouse, in what year was it done, what type of labor was used, and I would like to know if those individuals was paid for the construction of the labor that was done on the courthouse back then, Mr. Chairman. Can the Monument Council, Mr. Chairman, give a breakdown of the work that is presently being done right now on the courthouse and what have been done before on the courthouse? Can they give a breakdown of the work that is being done right now? And Mr. Chairman, the reason why I asked that question, because I know the work that was done before when we had the Monument Council in here the last time with the Honorable Minister, and they couldn't come to terms as to why the Wati building across the street couldn't get a monument permit to do the work that was needed to be done to save the building, but yet the courthouse got theirs. And there's a reason why I'm asking that question, Mr. Chairman, because I don't want it to be that the courthouse or the answers to that question is, yes, but the permit was requested from back then, and the works are being carried out now. No, it's not true. It's two different types of works. So I'm saving the minister that answer. So don't come and say, well, that permit that was issued for them to carry out works back then is the same permit that they're using now. No, it's not. No. It's new work that is being done on the courthouse now. Mr. Chairman, who and what makes an item placed on the monument list or to be called a monument? Who does that work? Mr. Chairman, I would like to know. Mr. Chairman, before we even look at Diamond Estate, before that roundabout was there was a huge long rock wall that was there. Is that a monument? Or was that a monument? And the big tamarind? Yes, the big tamarind tree that was bulldozed down with it too as well. Was that a monument? Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is the reason why I'm asking that question. You see? And that's why I want especially the Minister of ECYS to be particularly careful with his answers. Because, Mr. Chairman, if the vanguards of justice breaking the law, then why are we ever talking about giving penalties to those in Diamond Estate or any other monument that have been destroyed? Then this whole monument council, this whole monument list and all the monuments need a total review. Mr. Chairman, it can't be a pick and choosing. I would like to ask, plain, did the Monument Council receive a request from the courthouse for a monument permit? Did the Minister of ECYS sign a decree for a monument permit for the courthouse? Did the Minister of Vromi sign a building permit, a repair permit, whatever permit was needed for the construction work that is being carried out and done right now on the courthouse? Mr. Chairman, I would like to know. Mr. Chairman, I would also like to know what exactly is the role and function of the Monument Council. How many individuals make up the Monument Council? How long is their term? And like I said, their function at the Monument Council. Mr. Chairman, I asked the question earlier in terms of how many monuments are there on the island. The cemetery wall, the public cemetery wall across from Carrefour. In particular, the cemetery wall, is that a monument? The cemetery wall, is that a monument? And I would like to also ask this question, Mr. Chairman, because the last time I also asked the question, is the Monument Council aware that the cemetery wall is leaning at 35% and there is no footing anymore at the base of the wall? Are they aware of that? I would also like to know, Mr. Chairman, is there any plans in the near future? And there's a reason why I'm asking that. Any gust of more rain undermining, it's being undermined right now as we speak because of the heavy rains that we are getting right now. If you jump over the wall, we see that almost every 2-3 years, Mr. Chairman, the wall is painted with nice colors and stuff, look attractive, it's good. But if you jump over the wall, or inspection of the wall, and the grass are removed and you look at it, you'll realize there's no footing. at the base of the cemetery wall, the public cemetery, there is no footing anymore at the cemetery. So I would like to know if that is a monument, and if yes, that is a monument, is there any plans in the near future for it to be strengthened, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I would like to know, has the Monument Council ever taken or done a tour on the island to ascertain what can be established, or is there any new, or what look like, or what seems to be any emerging monuments for the near future or decades or centuries to come? Have they ever done a tour? And if yes, can they give a list of anything that they have, Mr. Chairman, or if ever it was done? For example, if they say, well, you know, the ball up on St. Peter's Hill probably by now can be a monument, saying that they have been there for years, or the building that they're standing on can be a monument, or the well that is up there can be a monument. I would like to know, have they ever done a tour to sort of ascertain what can be called a monument? The natural pool, is that a monument? I mean, you can ask so many different questions, given our historical context and all these archaeological finds that we have on the island. Have they ever done a tour to know what is considered, or what can be considered in the future, a monument? And with that, Mr. Chairman, I leave it right there, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. Members of Parliament, I would like to take a 3-minute adjournment, and then we'll go to the next speaker, MP Gumbs. Good afternoon, once again, members of Parliament, ministers, and the public viewing. We are currently in this urgent public meeting in which we have merged the agenda points to now state. The agenda point is now the update on the current legislation and policies regarding the preservation and management of heritage, as well as the current status of the Monument Council and the Monument Fund. We've had several speakers before, and we have one more speaker. Just a brief update before I go to the speaker. It's not. I meeting for 10 minutes to 1, 2, hello? It's still a little low.
Yellow.
Yeah, normally from here you're picking it
Yeah.
up. Now it's like you have to go all the way in to speak. Evan? Good afternoon once again, members of parliament, ministers, support staff, and the viewing public. We do apologize that we had to take an extended adjournment due to the fact that we had some technical issues. We are hoping that that has now been resolved. As such, we will now go to the next speaker on the list, MP Melissa Gumbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you, the members of parliament, ministers, and your support staff, and those joining us online or by radio. Mr. Chairman, contrary to my colleague, MP Duncan, in third form, I did choose to move forward with CXC history as a subject, which is a subject I always enjoyed, due in large part to the inclusion of historical St. Martin tidbits by my teachers, Mrs. Maria Van Inkevoort and Mrs. Napolina Richardson. Something that stuck out for me while learning much of the region's history is the commitment of our regional neighbors to preserving their historical assets and sites, even at the so-called expense of tourist dollars. The irony is that they continue to make tourist dollars specifically because of this historical site preservation, so it sometimes begs the question, what have we done? If we look around at the decisions that have been made over the years, we've done a terrible job of being stewards to our own historical legacy. Some prime examples of that is what was done to the Great Salt Pond over decades, from the placing of the dump to the ongoing pollution of its waters by businesses and homes lining its shoreline, or the selling of Fort Amsterdam to a hotel brand and not including rules for ownership with regards to upkeep, maintenance, and public access. And contrary to popular practice, there is no passing the buck to external parties when we consider who is responsible for the destruction we've seen over decades. I only have a few questions for this first round, Mr. Chairman, as the agenda point does mention an update on several of the issues my colleagues have asked questions on. So through you, Mr. Chairman, first to Minister Samuel, what is the, I guess, hold up with the establishment of the Monument Fund? After Hurricane Irma, I remember the call for the fund to be established to ensure that there is support and money to support the preservation of those historical assets. What would be the total budget for the fund once it is formally established, and have any cuts been made to this proposed budget? Minister Duran, through you, Mr. Chairman, you were in Parliament just last week to share and discuss your spatial development strategy, in which there's a section called Cultural and Historical Heritage. My colleague, MP Emmanuel, asked about the tamarind tree that was bulldozed, and I encourage him to check out this section because the document does continue to mention historical trees and how they themselves form part of that legacy of our history. Also in that section, reference is made on page 60, the last line, and it states, based on research of past settlements, an inventory was made to identify sites with high and medium expected cultural heritage or archaeological value. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister of Rami, can that inventory be made available to Parliament and the public, and was it conducted in collaboration with the Monument Council? And my last two questions for both ministers, Mr. Chairman. I hear a lot of, there's a lot of outrage, understandably, over this destruction of the sites at the ruins at Diamond Estate. But I do want to hear what is the comprehensive plan of approach between the Ministry of Rami and the Ministry of ECYS to ensure that it does not occur again. We have numerous examples, and I've heard in Parliament before that ministries don't talk to each other, departments do not talk to each other. So what is the plan moving forward that also includes a workflow for the collaboration between Monument Council, ECYS, and VROMI, and what can currently be improved regarding resources or policy or law to ensure effective protection of those local heritage sites, or at least what is left of them. And that's it for me for now, Mr. Chairman, and I await the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Gumbs. I see there's one more speaker on the list, after which we will go to the answering of the questions, but we have now MP Pantaflet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the chair, my colleagues in Parliament, the field, honorable ministers of education, and also of VROMI, and those that are assisting, those that are viewing, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would be very brief. Let me say this, that many questions were posed with regards to the issue of the Monument Council, and I think they are important questions. However, Mr. Chairman, one thing I must add is the fact that, and I kind of concurred the two colleagues that spoke earlier, saying that there would be no finger pointing and so on. It's for us to find solutions. And that is true, Mr. Chairman. However, always keep in mind that everything has a historical basis, Mr. Chairman, and therefore I do hope that when the questions are answered, that this comes to the forefront. Because, Mr. Chairman, it should not be presupposed that what is taking place now is something that hasn't happened in the past. One of my colleagues mentioned it. If I can use the term, for decades, the filling of the salt pond, the setting of Fort Amsterdam, and so on, Mr. Chairman, there is a history behind all these things. And I am curious to see what the answer is going to be from government, Mr. Chairman, because I have follow-up statements which I will make based on facts that I have. One of the privileges I use, and one that I say is a privilege for me, is to be part of an institution, organization, in this case, in this political forum for quite a long time, because you're able to gather information over a period of time, and there all comes a point in time where you can use that information. So, Mr. Chairman, key is that it should not come across as if this government was sitting there for decades and did nothing. It's going to be a learning process. Information will come to the forefront. And I will specifically target a particular monument, but as I said, not at this time, because I do have the facts, Mr. Chairman, documented facts. And I got it from my deceased friend, my mentor, Mr. Louis de Zonzon. And once he gives information, it's because he has done his research and he has the facts. So definitely, Mr. Chairman, I await the answers of the ministers, and basically will determine how I proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Pantaflet. Next, on our speakers list, MP De Wever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all my colleagues here and to the ministers and their teams present. I'm going to keep it really brief and to the point, because I noticed that, in my anticipation of speaking, MP Gumbs before me touched on exactly what I wanted to touch on. Because over the course of a week and a half, we have had presentations here on the Spatial Development Plan. We've also had presentations here on protecting properties and talking about expropriation of properties in the best interest of the people. And this is at this point here today when exactly you get to the nitty-gritty of what's important to a country rather than an individual and the greedy needs of an individual. And what I will bring up here today, a little bit more in detail on the Sustainable Spatial Development Plan, is that when the Minister of VROMI presented it to us last week, there was, I hope it's available online for the public, but there was a diagram on there with 3 circles overlapping each other, and it had economy, social, and environment. And while all those 3 aspects are important for us, what happens with the social part is that you miss very much the cultural part of any development. And today's meeting is exactly proof of why culture needs to be put at the forefront. And even though I question whether or not there may be sufficient communication between the Ministry of ROMI and the Ministry of ECYS when it comes to cultural importance or having it here at our forefront all the time as we move forward. As it comes to our education, please don't forget the role that TEAT plays in this dialogue. Because one of the things, and it's funny when you have a conversation with stakeholders such as cruise lines or hotel owners, they tell you our customers or our guests, our tourists want to see more culture. They don't want the cookie cutter, hotels or excursions that we're used to, maybe zip lines or the standard, boat trips. They don't ask for that anymore. They want history. They want culture. They want to live a day in the life of what it was like to exist here, not just today, but over the course of time, which means they want that part of our history that we are also lacking. So my question is, well, more of a comment. Where is the dialogue between the ministries such as TEAT, FROMI, and ECYS when we know from a TEAT's perspective that this is exactly what our visitors are craving? This is exactly a dialogue that I look here at the team, the support team that's here with Minister ECYS today. I know for a fact that there have been a dialogue with the head of culture and the head of the Tourism Bureau. So where are we with that? I need to know that there is cross-communication across the ministries and that we are not operating in silos. So while we are here to protect our culture, to protect our heritage in the most responsible manner ever, where is the dialogue between those ministries that is supposed to happen? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. Next, we have MP Richardson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the ministers that is here today, Minister Duran and Minister Samuel. Good afternoon to the listeners. Madam, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to culture, I'm very passionate about culture. And we know what took place, but what will be done to prevent it from happening again? This is the key question. What will be done to prevent this from happening again to the ministers? Like I say, I'm very passionate about culture. Over the years, I try myself to protect and also introduce different aspects of culture in the community. I could remember well, for about 4 to 5 years, we produced the St. Martin Multicultural Extravaganza in St. Martin at Maho. 800 persons, 1,100 persons packed that room. And sitting on the table with the ministers, Clara Rice used to do the cultural aspect for the St. Martin community, or the community of St. Martin. And I want to thank her very much for over the years for the work she has put into culture for us here. And there's many others. I had up to 26 different nationalities that produced. Even some came in from off island, St. Kitts, Curacao, Aruba, Statia, to present their culture aspect from a very educational format. I want to say what have happened just a few days ago, a week ago, at Diamond Estate. I believe our ancestors are crying in the grave, and wherever they are today, some of them were slaughtered like animals, and I know I'm not going to be long because it hurts and it cut deep. But amongst us in here, there's persons who perhaps was involved. And if not now, I know for sure in the past they were involved. Our monuments was bulldozed. Our monuments was burned. Our monuments was cut down by some of our own politicians. And we need to search deep and say when enough is enough. And we must say it's enough. I believe we have what we call the guava berry, and this too should be protected. It can be from a different aspect of an economical basis for St. Martin. The whole world wants guava berry. I just was at a school yesterday in the lowlands, and a Canadian principal told me how she had the guava berry colada, and she's just here, came into St. Martin as a principal last August. So I remember when Chinese came to this country and tried to take the guava berry seeds back to their country to see if they can plant them. So there's so many things we can talk about, and I have done this over years. I've talked about our culture, and I want to say, I want to talk direct to some of our politicians to stop it. Stop destroying what we have. Some have talked about the salt pond. I on record for many years talking about the Great Salt Pond, the different pastel colors, how beautiful it was, how I used to ask my bigger brother while I was 8 years to take me to Guana Bay, Mount William Hill, Dutch Quarter, so when you come back in the summer, you could see all those really radiant colors from the pond. I remember the late Roy Martin in a heated discussion on culture, when he went and brought the picture out and said, this is culture, this is the salt pond, after asking so many questions and physically putting it in my face. So it's nothing new to me, but we have to stop. And I'm talking direct to those persons who know they have a hand involved in knocking that monument down. Mr. Chairman, I will thank you very much, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Richardson. I will adjourn the meeting for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon and welcome back. After that brief adjournment, we will continue, and the next speaker is MP Rolando Bryson. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, the Secretary General, my colleague, members of Parliament, the honorable ministers and the support team here, those in the Tribune, and those following by various media. Mr. Chairman, I am very happy for this meeting and echo the sentiments of many others who highlighted the fact that there is a united voice, at least from the Parliament, in terms of the fact that what has happened at Diamond Estate is a travesty and something that should never be repeated again. And in several ways, it kind of brings me back to what I've been saying with regards to Mullet Bay, for example, that it's important to uncover the truth of why something happened, who made it happen, in order to make sure that something like this never happens again. So, Mr. Chairman, the first thing I set out to do is to understand the property itself from a cadastral perspective, because we all know the building itself, but I went to the cadastre to actually now get the maps of the properties in that area. And Mr. Chairman, there are two properties. One is Certificate of Measurement 236 of 2013, which is where Diamond Estate as we know it is listed. Mr. Chairman, this property is listed under the L.C. Fleming on behalf of his sister Y.A. France Fleming. However, there's another property right adjacent to it because, to be thorough, I wanted to understand what is the entire area. And this other property, different from what is listed on the other mate brief, this is 082 of 2022. This one is actually, and to be clear, this property is not where Diamond Estate is. It is the one, let's say, leading up to it, directly adjacent to it, so closer to the Dutch side, whereas Diamond Estate is higher up. This one is of Mr. R. Lede, power of attorney, and there's a company, Intertwine NV, and managing director of Greenfields BV. Mr. Chairman, it's important for us to really understand, especially for me as members of Parliament, what we're actually dealing with, not just, of course, everyone has pointed out the significance of the property that was destroyed. But I think sometimes, if we want to understand why something happens, we also have to start thinking what was a possible motive. Because, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe something as a travesty as this, there's only one word that comes to mind that could allow someone to take such a decision or order such a thing, and that is the word profit. Who would profit from something like this? Would the government profit from allowing this to happen? Politically, no. It's political suicide if any of these ministers had signed off and said, go ahead. The owner of the property, Mr. Chairman, doesn't profit either, because it is an asset that they own, and whether they sell it or not, they still have the same value on their balance sheets, and they have owned this property for a long time. The adjacent property owner, Mr. Chairman, one might say, is Mr. Lede maybe trying to buy the property. But I did contact him, and he said emphatically, on the record, no, he knew about that property having a monument for a long time, and indicated to different people that he does not believe that that property should even be developed. That's an adjacent neighbor. So, Mr. Chairman, there's only one entity, I believe, that ultimately really profits from this. This is someone that can profit from the sale. In other words, a broker, a real estate agent, someone with power of attorney, and that needs to be the focus. But, Mr. Chairman, what is also a question I then have to the government, not specifically maybe these ministers, but if any one of us owns a property and you wake up the next day and you find it broken down, what is the first thing any one of us will do? You would report it to the authorities. That's the first thing. So my question is, can the ministers or the government indicate is this has been a formal report for destruction of property? because I think that will also highlight what is going on here. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the government can help me get the firm answer on this question as to who would profit from this destruction. Who stands to gain the most from this? A real estate agent that can sell a property, get a commission, then develop it, get another commission? Is this what is going on here? And we need to understand the truth. People singing about the blame game. Mr. Chairman, many times ministers do get the blame. And if there's anything at fault with some of my further questions here, then I can also say, Minister, did you do this, did you do that? If you didn't, then you have a blame. But Mr. Chairman, this will continue to happen if it is the case where someone is able to put profit over the heritage of their country. And I want to know if the government itself, with or without an aangifte, is going to at least research who was responsible, who gave the orders, who is that? There's a video of a machine. Can you track it? Can you see a serial number in the video? There must be a way to investigate all of this and find the truth. Should not be that hard. Because, Mr. Chairman, with just very little research and just 24 hours to go by, I've uncovered a lot. And a lot of people have spoken. And they want to speak to the government as well. So I will encourage and ask the ministers to please look into this, because I believe, hopefully by the second round, we can get the answers that we need on this. Because we cannot allow this type of thing to happen in this country again and again and again for personal gain of profit. Mr. Chairman, when you have a property that is a monument and you look at the law, there's actually, interestingly, two definitions in both the National Ordinance on Monuments as well as the National Decree on the Monument Council. They make a distinction, interestingly enough, between monument and protected monument. There's a flat definition in the law as to a building X amount of years with these specifications. That's a monument, period. So this thing that, oh, it's not a protected monument, so I could knock it down, it is still a monument. The protection of that monument does add some other layers of protection to it, but it does not change the fact, by the definition in the law, it is a monument. Because I don't want to downplay the significance of the excuse that is eventually going to come. Yeah, but in a monument, I did nothing wrong, it was not illegal. It is a monument. The question is, was it a protected monument, and why? If not, why not? Mr. Chairman, who is the entity that is charged with advising the minister of assigning properties to become protected monuments? Is it that the minister himself or his own department are supposed to walk around the island and identify places? Or is that the role of the Monument Council? Is that the role of the public? We need to understand the roles here. Because, Mr. Chairman, through you, the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports in the law has ultimate responsibility. Article 3 says that. But various articles also state, for example, on advice of the Monument Council. Therefore, there is a clear relationship between the two entities. Coming, for example, to the situation of the courthouse. Very worrisome to hear, indeed, that they may not have the requisite permits to do the works that they're doing. Then the question is, who does the courthouse go to for that permission? Do they go directly to the minister, or is it addressed first to the Monument Council, and then the minister is advised and takes a decision? That is important to understand the process, because in this parliament, we know how quick some members in here are trying to find any way to blame the ministers, especially the ones in front of us today. And that's okay. If there's responsibility, I expect, like I've said before, take it. But all involved in the process also have to acknowledge this was a misstep. This is how we're going to fix it to make sure this doesn't happen in the future if there were missteps. Also, Mr. Chairman, the issue of the fine that was mentioned earlier by MP Ramu. Indeed, that fine is legislated in the National Ordinance on Monuments, but there are other criminal laws and civil laws that can apply to the destruction of such a property. Can the minister, in consultation, perhaps with the Minister of Justice, just for the record, indicate what other possible violations, for example, the destruction of another person's property without express consent of the owner, is that a crime? Is that something that is to be tolerated in this country? I would like to know that indeed. Mr. Chairman, I also need to understand, and this may be to the Minister of Vromi, although I do understand that the cadastre officially falls under the Minister of Finance, but there is a close relationship between the Minister of Vromi and the Minister of the Ministry of Vromi and the cadastre. And why I say this, in these two made brief, I noticed something very odd, and in other made brief as well. Whenever someone has power of attorney in any way to represent the owner of a property, and they do anything at the cadastre, all the cadastral documents, for example, the adjacent property says clearly who has power of attorney. Interestingly enough, Mr. Chairman, the property on Diamond Estate is probably one of the first made brief I've ever seen where the person that has power of attorney to represent this property is not listed. I would like to understand what the procedures are for the listing of who the representatives are in public cadastral documents. Because the public, for many reasons, needs to know, if I have a problem with this property here that's spilling sewage, who do I contact? Who is the representative? Which is why, like I said, I see here the authorized representative is listed. Also in the Chamber of Commerce, when you go, let's say it's under an NV, you see the director of that company there. But in this property, that is still very unclear. So in your quest to get the answers, not because it's just simply a blame game like they like to play, this is about finding out why it happened and making sure it never happens again, indeed. With those questions, Mr. Chairman, if I can get that clarity from our government on what they have been able to uncover so far, perhaps in the second round, we can go further into understanding why, who, what, where, when, why, related to this. And Mr. Chairman, my final point, in many situations, there's another side to it as well. Let me play the side of the owner of the property. Because let's say I own this property and I do want to develop it, but I have a monument on it. This is something that I inherited, and it is a value on paper, but it's not something I can do to better my life or improve. Are there other options? Rather than knocking down a building, for example, is the government open to at least receiving a proposal, for example, like what was done at Emilio's and so on, to incorporate the existing structure, but still make use of it commercially? I say that to say that sometimes people will feel encumbered by our monument laws, where it's a disadvantage to you that you own a monument because now basically I can't build apartments and do something with it. But is that the only thing we can do with land? Is that the only thing we can do with cultural and heritage structures? Look at Emilio's, look at other properties, look at Grand Cas, where they incorporate restaurants, offices, the stores in Phillipsburg that have incorporated and kept the natural beauty built around it, and were able to have commercial success with it. Is that a possibility? To make it clear to owners that we're not saying that having a monument is a dead end to your prosperity. On the contrary, it can perhaps be an opportunity to responsibly send a proposal to the relevant authorities, which I would like the ministers to tell us, and say, look, I have this beautiful historical building, or the salt factory, or any others, and I would like to propose that we do this in collaboration with the government. I have an investor, we can do tours, for example. So there is no excuse to just say, well, I got to break it down because I got people to feed, or family to take care of. That's not an excuse, because you can and should in this country make better use of such beautiful structures and incorporate it into our tourism product. We lack these type of tourist attractions. And let us look at those historical structures in St. Martin and see how attractive they are to tourists. They are all a success. So the Monument Law, the Monument Council, the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports is not necessarily hampering the opportunity of business owners to develop. But do it responsibly. Don't go knocking down buildings because you maybe want an apartment building or whatever, because things rough. No, find a better way to do it and incorporate culture and heritage into your developments, and the minister will be able to outline for me what such a procedure would be so that it is clear and that excuse is no longer used by such owners. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you, MP Rolando Bryson. We have another speaker, MP Westcott Williams. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, a good afternoon to my colleagues and everyone tuned into this meeting. Mr. Chairman, I had thought for a moment, but maybe you can respond. But firstly, let me thank you for honoring, and when I say thank you, I'm speaking the presidium, I assume, in charge of the scheduling of meetings of Parliament for a very long time not having been the case, scheduling an urgently requested meeting within the period of time according to our rules of order. But then, in stating that, so thank you for this meeting now within the rules of order, 4 days for an urgently requested meeting. But then I asked myself, the committee meeting on immigration and labor, for which the Minister of VSA had confirmed his presence, why was that stricken from the agenda of Parliament? I also, in the presence of the Minister of VROMI, the presentation on the spatial development, which ties right into the agenda points for today. So the presentation on the spatial development strategy meeting of yesterday was also suddenly canceled. And was it that the minister is not yet prepared to answer, or was that a decision by the presidium? And if the minister, in responding to questions, could give an indication as to when he will be ready with the responses or to the questions posed in the meeting based on a presentation by the minister himself. Mr. Chairman, if you would bear with me, because of course I could not have been aware of there would be a proposal to combine the 2 agenda points of this meeting. So if you just bear with me a little as I try to, that decision having been taken and agreed to by the members of Parliament, but I was not able to put it all together, so that's why I ask you to bear with me. Mr. Chairman, there are many definitions for heritage, and I would like to use the one in my few questions. I would like to use the following definition. Heritage is the full range of our inherited traditions, monuments, objects, and culture, and the range of contemporary activities, meanings, and behaviors that we draw from them. So our actions today based on our heritage. I love that one. Mr. Chairman, I hear the ministers today. And, oftentimes, also in here, you hear, well, this was not done in the past, and we got to ensure that we do it now. But there are some things that were done in the past. And I want to know from the ministers today if they are aware of these, as well as having followed on them. So my question would be, Are the ministers aware of the document Historic Bridges of St. Martin by J. Harvester, L. Bosch, and CIMARC? And if you are aware of it, what is the status of that particular document, if any, for the government and for the ministries? So, Historic Bridges of St. Martin, J. Harvester, L. Bosch, and CIMARC. Does the minister, in the activities that they appear or at least alleged to have undertaken in the context of identifying monuments, can the ministers, any one of you, give an indication as to the 1950 Simpson Bay Bridge? You know, what's the status? Is that worth considering? Yes or no? Is it in the projections to be considered? What's the status of the monument, the Simpson Bay Cistern? What's that status? What's the status of it, you know, in terms of monumental objects and buildings? Can any one of the ministers explain whether the budget for the St. Martin Museum, as it stands today, and which it has been for several years, what has been requested by the museum for its budget compared to the 100,000 guilders that is allocated on the budget of government? So what is the request from the St. Martin Museum Heritage Foundation, because that's the organization of the museum, it's a foundation. What have they requested? What have they been requesting from government for their budget? And how does it compare to what they have been receiving from government, just over 100,000 guilders? In the context of identifying, preserving, protecting, what has the government done where that is concerned for and with the Great Salt Pond? Tie into that for me, please, the whole issue of the landfill, the resettlement, the ring road, and how could I mention the ring road without asking about the vendors in that entire location? What is the result? Where do they stand right now after we hearing where they would have been relocated to, etc.? So just give me a picture. And how can I mention the Great Salt Pond without asking the government's position, vision, and actions, if any, on the Foga salt factory? And then Minister Avromi, you could send it to me in writing, but I would like you to walk me through the procedure for a building permit. You know, just give me, as a lay person, understand how that goes. And specifically, the hillside policy and other such policies in that process. So I want to imagine you, of course, you send in your building permit, I know the plans and all of that. And then is there a particular checklist that you check off for every application that comes in and determines, well, you know, the hillside policy applies, so you need to adjust your plan accordingly? Just walk me through the procedure for a building permit when it comes to policies such as the hillside policy. Can the Minister Avromi indicate how many large projects are currently under review by his ministry, by the ministry, the investments involved with these large projects, if any objections, and does the minister believe that the objections criteria as presently used by the department or by his ministry, that they really offer persons who wish to object the possibility to get to the ministry and that the ministry would really take the objections into consideration. Can the minister, and again, Mr. Chairman, I don't expect that today, but can the minister, again, walk me through or walk with me and point out the developments and which ones are in by government and which ones have not yet come to government from the Simpson Bay Bridge, and we walk and we go up the Welfare Road, we go around the Union Road, right to the Causeway. So if we could get a walk, a visual walk at least, you know, and look at some of what is going on, and the minister can point out to me, this one is in other department, that one not yet, this one, you know, that kind of a pointing out. Let's do it from bridge to bridge. Mr. Chairman, through you, I heard many of my colleagues ask with respect to the Monument Council, and I would await the answers in terms of the organizations and such. But can the government explain why the budget of the Monument Council has been reduced with 100,000 guilders, according to the last budget that was approved for 2022? Why? They had too much money, didn't have enough, they didn't have activities to carry out, reduced with 100,000 guilders. Mr. Chairman, I referred earlier to, often it is said, but we don't have no laws, we don't have no policies, we don't have, St. Martin doesn't have any laws. We have a monument ordinance, we have a monument decree, Landsbesluit houdende algemene maatregelen. We are supposed to have a monument register, and according to law, reporting to Parliament on this should take place. When was the last time that that happened, if I may ask, that reporting to Parliament took place? Mr. Chairman, is and are the ministers aware of this booklet before me? The Protected Historical Sites and Buildings on St. Martin. And when I mentioned earlier, we sometimes say, yeah, but there was nothing in place back then. But this booklet is from 1994. The Protected Historical Sites and Buildings of St. Martin. All of them are listed in here, including the one of the courthouse, etc., asked about. What is the follow-up to this, as far as our monuments are concerned? How do we guarantee, how is the government guaranteeing that booklets such as these from the same Museum Heritage Foundation, that they remain up to date? This is from the museum. So I want to take it back to my question regarding, is the museum being funded sufficiently to continue with work such as these? We talk about nature. And yes, in the monument ordinance, what can be a monument and then a decision to protect some of these is quite broad. There are many things that can be declared a monument. And so, when you look at the nature policy plan that the government has developed, again, dear, the approval by Parliament is required by law. Has the nature policy plan been sent to Parliament for approval according to law? Mr. Chairman, there has been a lot of talk about building codes. Our building codes are not up to date, etc., etc. So the ministry, and I would like to know who was the driving force behind the new building code, the bouwbesluit. This bouwbesluit is so extensive that the Ministry of Vromi has to carry out training sessions before this bouwbesluit can go into effect. Does the ministry feel, and that's why I asked who's the driving force behind it, because does the ministry feel that where that is concerned, we might have become just a tad bit too technical for our St. Martin's environment. You know, do we really? Because now the question would be, when will it go into effect? When will we decide, when will you decide, Mr. Chairman, that, you know, well, I think the people understanding. Because don't let us only think of large projects in terms of buildings, but everybody who wants to build would be subjected to this huge bobslide. And I encourage everybody to check this bobslide. It is not just a bobslide. And is it available in the English language as well? Is my question. Mr. Chairman, the government said to us in 2022 that there is a mutual understanding, and now I refer to my colleague MP De Weaver, on collaborating on tourism and culture-related projects. What is that understanding exactly? The government indicated to Parliament that they were going to organize workshops to educate educators, after-school programs, persons within the hospitality sectors, and the public about St. Martin's intangible cultural heritage. Has this happened? If not, why not? And if yes, please explain how it did. The government continued to inform Parliament. The Culture Department, in collaboration with the UNESCO office, will be organizing cultural heritage trainings on the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention for policy workers in the culture, tourism, and economy departments to ensure, etc. Because the two agenda points have been put together, I'll cut it short there. Has it happened? And if not, why not? Because these are the things that the government comes to Parliament and says, this is what we're going to do. So now that we have started 2023, the question is, which of these things have happened? The Department of Tourism, also to my colleague MP De Weaver, and the Department of Culture have established a good working relationship between the department. Based on what vision is this working relationship being executed? The government indicated to us that the plans for a national theatre of the performing arts are culturally on hold as the financial means and land availability is scarce. Is this reflected in any capital budget of government? So there's no money, but are you even projecting that it be done? Government continued. The National Theatre of the Performing Arts is currently on hold as the financial means and land scarcity. The department is refocusing its efforts to renovate the John Lamini Center, of which will include a small theatre that is to be used for training and performances. What's the status of that? What actions have been undertaken now that it couldn't? The National Theatre of the Performing Arts is currently on hold, but the John Lamini Center would have been upgraded with a small theatre to be used for training and performances. Mr. Chairman, several of my colleagues asked regarding policies. My question is, are both ministers here today and their supporting staff aware of the listing of what should be all policies of government on the government website? Are the ministers aware of these policies? And I would ask that the ministers would look at these policies that fall under their purview and give an indication to where they stand. So to answer some of my colleagues, yes, the Nature Plan St. Martin 2021-2025, that's there. The presentation notes on the reinstatement of Article 28A, that's there. But the last ministry plan that is there under those policies and reports is the one of 2012-2014, and now this is specifically to the Minister of Vromi. So are the ministers aware of these policies? And do the ministers not believe that these policies, at least if we're going to give the public of St. Martin and others an overview of the policies according to which the ministries operate, shouldn't we have up-to-date policies? The economic zoning, residential economic zoning of this country is a policy document in that same listing of 2009. The investment guide for St. Martin is one of, I don't even know if it's before 2010, and that's on the government site. That's how we are informing people what policies exist and which ones don't exist. Mr. Chairman, I realize my time is out actually, so I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. We have come to the end of the first round. We have no more speakers, and we will adjourn for a few minutes to confer with the ministers present as to the time that would be needed to respond to the many questions that have been asked. We will adjourn for 5 minutes. Good afternoon again, and welcome back. After that brief adjournment, we had adjourned the meeting to check with the ministers. But before I go over to that, there were two questions raised by MP Westcott Williams when she started her discussion, and they had to do with why we replaced the VSA meeting, which was scheduled today for 11. Well, for a long time, there seemed to have been a misunderstanding about an urgent request. An urgent request is not necessarily will not necessarily translate into an urgent meeting, because two things need to happen. One, those requesting the meeting should indicate the urgency, because simply by stating we hereby request an urgent meeting does not translate into the meeting being scheduled as an urgent meeting. Then secondly, it's the prerogative of the chair to decide whether the chair considers the request an urgent request. Is there sufficient urgent reason? When this request came in, it was discussed, and the Presidium and the chair in particular, well, it's the prerogative of the chair, it was decided to honor this request as an urgent request, and hence we had to postpone the VSR meeting to a later date, because it was a continuation of a meeting, and schedule this meeting this morning. Why? Particularly because of the heated discussion and the reaction of the public as to the demolition of what was considered by not many probably, but by all, as a travesty, something that should not have happened. We hope that the answers, when provided by government, will bring some clarity as to how this could have happened, and maybe why it has happened, how these type of actions can be prevented, and also how to proceed in the future. Secondly, there was a question also as to why the VROMI meeting did not continue on Thursday. On Wednesday afternoon, we received, on Wednesday, I can't remember whether it's morning or afternoon, but we received a letter from the cabinet of the minister indicating that the minister was not yet ready with all the answers, and if we could grant more time. That information has been shared with all in the new convocation that came out announcing actually the postponement. So I hope this has bring the needed clarification that was requested. And as far as the continuation of this meeting, after discussing with both ministers, there are quite some questions that have been asked, and both ministers require some time, and particularly the Ministry of ECYS is involved with preparation of other activities surrounding the royal visit, and it would take some time to provide the answers. So rather than saying it will continue Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I hereby announce that the meeting will continue at a later date, and we therefore adjourn this meeting until further notice. I wish you all a pleasant weekend, but before I do so, there is a request for a point of order. And what's the point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I still haven't received the documents from the minister,
Which document?
the request for the monument permit for the courthouse. Mr. Chairman, work is going on right now as we speak on the courthouse.
Okay.
The courthouse is a monument. For that work to be going on, they need a building permit and they need a monument permit. We have both ministers here.
They don't
that
need a
don't need
building
2
permit.
weeks. Well, whether they need it or not, they need a monument permit. They need something.
Okay. It is not necessarily a point of order. Minister? No. No what? The minister has indicated, the Minister of Rome has indicated that he has no comment at this time. What I can, no, I'm saying that you have requested a permit. The minister did not walk with permits in his pocket, but he has indicated in his opening remarks that he has granted no permit. He has received no request for any permit. So he can't grant you a copy of something that doesn't exist. So it's not, he said that in the opening remarks. Yeah, the minister, oh no, that's true. What the minister referred to was Diamond Estate, but for the courthouse. Minister, have you granted a permit, as far as you know? Yes. For the courthouse. It's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There has been no permit request nor permit granted by the Ministry of Thromi with regards to the courthouse. Not Diamond Estate, for the record.
Okay.
Again.
Minister, Education. Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in regards to that specific question, there has been a request for a permit and it is in process. Thank you.
We are not having a third round or a continuation of it. The minister said there has been a request. It's in process. So you can take it from there. I thank you all for your presence. The meeting is adjourned until further notice, and I wish you a pleasant weekend.